like it starts with easy things. So I smoke, and sometimes I ask him like, can I have a lighter? And if it's two girls alone, they often will not even answer and just leave.
아저씨's and 아줌mas here love, love internationals.
Funny story, once I got kicked out of a store because I wasn't speaking English.
Can you briefly introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Dilyana Zborskaya. I'm from Turkey. I'm Kai student, and I'm doing master in mechanical engineering department.
So my name is Aron, and I've been here since August on an exchange. I stay here 1 year, and what I study is like biomedicine, and that's what I've been doing like the last month.
So my name is Gustavo. I'm from Brazil. I am 22 years old currently, studying in Daejeon.
How has that 4 months been so far for you, like the experience?
I mean, I love Daejeon because it's close to Seoul, but at the same time, I love nature. But I was struggling too because internationals are here a bit alone.
Until now, actually quite nice. I haven't had many problems and lots of friends. Like in the beginning, it's always the international group, but then later also you start meeting more Koreans, going out, bars, and also meeting them and talking more to them. So although I have a language barrier because I really don't speak a lot of Korean, I can still make friends and talk to them.
Daejeon is a smaller city, so like Koreans there, they don't really speak English that much, which has been really interesting for the whole Korean immersion experience. We do have a lot of foreigners because there are 4 or 5 universities there that are like, you have many people. But so far so good. I love it, and I want to keep coming and just be here for a while.
What's it like living in a countryside as a foreigner?
For me, in Seoul, everything is, I think, easier and you can reach a lot of things. But in Daejeon, it's still close because, like, we can go with KTX, But still, I love nature. So I love calm places more than party places. But some of the students are telling me, like, Dila, we need to see more people. So for me, I'm like a ajumma, you know. I love kind of quiet place because I'm really loud. I'm kind of energetic. Yeah.
So I would say the main difference, so at least when I have like traveled to Seoul or Busan, is that there's less people that will talk to you in English. So you really have to spot. My go-to is I spot just younger people, so students. They tend to have a better knowledge of English, which in Daejeon is more difficult than in the bigger cities, definitely. And people are, I would say, here far more relaxed than what I've experienced in Seoul. It's a little bit nicer and in a chilly way. Also, when you walk around Gungno, which is the area where most people, where most students meet, it's a lot of study cafes and then like more of nightlife. But there's also no big clubs in comparison to the bigger cities.
So in the countryside, you probably will face a few challenges that you wouldn't face in like bigger cities. As I just said, like people there don't really speak English that much, so sometimes getting by is a little bit harder, but you can still do it. I mean, everyone who comes to Korea knows if you'll come to Hamnida or so this part is okay. I guess people are just more shy in there, they don't really want to interact with foreigners that much, but it's part of the experience. You're gonna see people like this everywhere.
You just made mention as to Daejeon being like cheaper than Seoul. What part of Daejeon is a lot cheaper than living in Seoul?
I think house and food too, because like I know there is a lot of variety option like in Seoul, but I think student life is easier because, for example, in Kaist we are giving monthly dorms like 100,000, which is like the cheapest nearly dorm in maybe Daejeon and in Seoul too, because I know my friends told me it's over than 300,000 or 200,000 for them just dorm cost or house cost, and here is I think better for students. When we look for outside near to campus, like I told you, like there is Chunnam. That's why it's a university area. Like you can see foods like between maybe 5,000 to 40,000 Korean won. So it's, I think compared with Seoul, it's cheaper.
You just made mention like there's no, like big clubs and all that. What type of clubs are here in Daejeon?
So I know of two, and mainly because there's a lot of other clubs, but they often don't let foreigners in. And the ones we go, they are in Dunsan. So basically, one of them is more R&B, rap, sometimes electronic music, and the other one is basically, I would say, every type of hit in every type of genre. So from K-pop to British pop to rock, and so on.
Awesome. You just made mention earlier on as to like some of the big clubs not allowing foreigners. Why do you think that is?
Um, in the beginning, I was very shocked a little bit when they told me no, foreigners not in. But when I asked them, from what I heard, is that here the culture and, for example, when you're talking to women is very different, and they're a little bit afraid of when a foreigner comes in, and the way we approach women or not, they are often very separate. I've learned that, or you go for it and they don't know each other at all, or it's friendship groups. So there's people that already met before. So if you're there as a foreigner and you don't know anyone, it's kind of disturbing for them. Plus, often they say a lot of things in Korean, and when you don't know the answer, I think they get a lot of very stressed when they cannot really communicate what they want. The people as well as also the staff.
How far would you say Daejeon is from Seoul?
It depends on what you want to use. If you go by bus, it's about 2 hours. If you go by train, 1.5 hours by Mogunghwa and like 40 minutes by KTX. So like when it comes to Korea, because Korea is like very small, so it's quite far. But when it comes to like bigger places, like I am from Brazil, so Brazil is huge. So like a 2 hour ride is what it takes for me to go from my home to my university in Brazil.
How is living in Daejeon like compared to Seoul? I mean, you've been to Seoul a couple of times, right? Yeah.
I mean, for me, as I said, Seoul is for me. It's so loud, but at the same time, it's so beautiful too. Cause like you can find, I love coffee shops, for example. I really love seeing people in there. But when you go to coffee shop, for example, weekend, it's always crowded. When I was trying to do metro line, I was just like, what is going on? It's so complex, you know? And I was just like, oh my God, it's so crowded and people are trying to be rushed. And like, I was just shocked.
How would you say, like generally the nightlife is out here, like in the countryside?
For clubs, it's definitely not as Seoul. Bars are quite nice. There's many bars, especially here in Daejeon. We have a lot, since it has a lot of universities. We do have a lot of bars where you can drink and have fun also, and different types of bar with different ambience. For clubs, I just know those two.
What would you say, the difference is between the Koreans living in Daejeon and also like the Koreans living like in bigger cities, let's say Seoul or Busan?
Koreans in there, they are a little bit more shy. They don't really want to interact with you that much. I actually, funny story. Once I got kicked out of a store because I wasn't speaking English. So I got to the person and then I was like, oh, how much is this? Or it was like on my first few days, and the person was like, no, I don't speak English. I don't speak English. Just, yeah. This is probably something that would never happen. At least it has never happened to me in Seoul or in Busan.
Would you say, like living out here as a foreigner, Koreans are, like welcoming to, like accepting foreigners in Daejeon?
Actually, yeah and no. And it depends. Because, like, for example, being international in Daejeon is kind of good, but otherwise, some people, like, we had some racism, by the way, in like some pubs. We saw it and we were just shocked because people act like, oh, you guys are foreigner. But some Koreans support us, so I was just kind of shocked about it. Ajushis and Ajumas here love, love internationals.
Yes and no, I would say it's always more experience like one-to-one. There's people that are very curious. Some will just look at you, some will actually go and approach you and ask you where you're from, what you're doing here, exchange, do you know Korean? Especially for the younger people. In my experience, they're more the ones that are open, curious. Older people, in my experience, have often just ignore you, like if you don't exist. Sometimes they say stuff. I know some of the swear words, so I know they said something bad, but I don't really know and I don't engage. So it depends also a little bit generational.
What's it like, trying to date as a foreigner in the countryside?
Girls are really shy. And so sometimes we are at the nightclubs or bars. You just try to go up to them, and either they directly like say no to you, like get away, I don't speak English or something like that, or they are really really open and like want to have a conversation and this kind of stuff. But like dating Koreans so far, I have not been successful on that matter.
It has been hard as long as it comes to dating Koreans. Definitely, it's very difficult, the approach, because you never know, and sometimes you see that they are afraid. Like it starts with easy things. So I smoke, and sometimes I ask them like, can I have a lighter? And if it's two girls alone, they often will not even answer and just leave. Although I'm not even saying anything else or pick up line. I'm just asking generally for a lighter to light up a cigarette, and I see them smoking, so I know they have one. So often the first approach is difficult. With foreigners, it's easier, or dating apps, they tend to answer relatively quick, but the first approach is always a difficult one. And after that, it's just a lot about communication and seeing where exactly, because I think there's expectancies and like stereotypes you have or how you imagine a relationship, which is very different from here. So here I would say they date far longer before anything happens. It's very slow and it takes time. And at least from where I come from, it's normally far quicker and faster.
Earlier on, you made mention about like you facing racism, like at pubs and clubs. So can you like talk more about that?
Okay, first of all, in some areas, like if you guys go to some pubs, first they can say to you like, no, foreigner, no, we are not getting. And like if we ask, they told us like sometimes like, oh, foreigners are stealing, some for example, like beer or mekju, they're saying most of the time. Sometimes they're saying like boys always trying to distract the Korean girls. We went some pub, I don't want to give the name, but like we went there and they act like we're like not human. Because, for example, my friend was close to bar and they just split the water on him. They didn't warn him to like. They could say like, "Can you go a bit far?" But they didn't. They just split the water to his face, and I was just kind of shocked. Because you cannot do this to anywhere to that person. And that was another case. And sometimes some people are directly doing middle finger thing to internationals. Yeah.